Hi, welcome to Buffzone, sponsored by Mart, home for all your tailgating needs. I'm Kyle Ringo. This is Ryan Thorburn. We cover the University of Colorado for the Daily Camera newspaper, and Ryan covering the University of Colorado football team this season has been a tough assignment. The Buffs aren't playing well. A lot of people are making jokes about this team, and nobody's more upset about it, obviously, than the players and coaches. But just where do things stand here heading into Pac-12 play this week at Washington State?
Well, first of all, Fresno State just scored again. That game was – I've never seen anything like that game. I mean, that was like a 5A powerhouse high school team going against a six-man team out in the country or something. I just don't understand how you can give up all those one-play 97-yard drives, 96-yard drive, 60-yard drive. That's just mind-blowing to me. I know there's a lot of freshmen out there on defense in the secondary. I know they're learning the concepts, learning to play at this level, learning to compete. But there's just no excuse for a game like that when you have the tradition of Colorado, you're from the Pac-12. I know Fresno State has some good skill players, but that hopefully is rock bottom for this program. I just can't see a worse game than that. I can't imagine one.
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because during my tenure here covering this football program, there's been numerous times where I've said that to myself. Yeah. Whether it was, Montana State to open the Dan Hawkins era, the game at Toledo was pretty memorable in that regard. The epic collapse against Kansas to end the Dan Hawkins era, and then losing to Sacramento State and then Fresno State in back-to-back weeks. I must have said that exact same thing. This is rock bottom, 4 or 5 times now, and I think I've learned my lesson. I'm not going to say this is rock bottom. Who knows what might happen next? And speaking of that, what do you think has to happen for this team to get on track and at least playing better, at least being competitive in Pac-12 games, which was a challenge for this team last year, and maybe win a game or two this season, because it looks like that's about the top end for this team is a game or two, if that.
I think it's maturity, and I don't just mean the freshman players on the team. I mean the coaching staff needs to grow up. I mean, quit talking about the running game and try and execute a running game. Who cares if you're down 14-0? You don't give up the run and get in a shootout with Fresno State in 100-degree weather just because you're down 14-0. So I think you need to stick with your principles, stick with your plans that you have, and maybe find a quarterback. That would help if you could just find one quarterback, stick with that guy, maybe stick with the running game. Defensively, you need to show some pride. I mean, getting Doug Rippey back would help. Getting Polk back would help. But show some pride. I mean, this is Fresno State we're talking about. 55-7, was that the halftime score? I mean, that's insane. I think the defense needs to grow up and mature and fight harder. And the offense really needs to stick with their plan of a pro-style offense based on run first, pass second. And they really haven't done that. So I put this as much on the coaches as the young players, and the combination of inexperience with the coaches and freshmen and sophomores all over the field really has CU in a place where they're not competitive at this level.
Watching that team run onto the field, I've mentioned this several times on story and on Twitter and now here, but watching the team run on the field before the Fresno game the other night, it was 102 degrees, the press box is open. I obviously felt the heat walking up to the press box, and I was wondering how the Buffs would respond to it, and they just sort of trudged out on the field behind John Embry like they were going to get their taxes done or something. Yeah. I mean, it was not the let's go get them entrance that you would expect from a college football team about to play, its first road game and, desperate for a win. And so that sort of mindset to me, I think definitely needs to change. You hit it right on the head with that. This team needs more fire, and it's puzzling to me with guys like John Embry and Eric Bieniemy on the staff why this team doesn't have more fire. I'm not sure why it doesn't, but that definitely has to change. And the running game is another thing. I asked John Embry about this the other day, and he said they got away from the running game a week after Christian Powell runs for almost 150 yards. The guy just basically disappeared in that game against Fresno, and I don't see how that happens in the span of a week. And Coach Embry said it was because Fresno got up so quickly, so early, but it's still the first quarter. I mean, it's 14-0, it's 21-0, yeah, but it's still the first quarter. If you can get the running game going, put together a drive, eat up a little bit of clock, and score some points, now it's 14-7, 21-7, and you got your running game going. It's a different game. So I just don't understand why they gave up on the running game.
Why not run the ball just to get the clock moving so the game ends? I mean, that would save you some embarrassment if you get the running game going and keep it within 40, okay? Try that.
And this is a team that has, and a coaching staff that has talked since they were hired, since they arrived, about having a running game, and we haven't seen it yet. It shows up every now and then, but there's nothing close to a consistent running game in this program right now.
Speaking of getting a fiery, emotional demeanor about yourself, Bill McCartney kind of took over the press conference the other day. What did you make of him kind of trying to rally the troops?
You know, it's always fun listening to Bill because he has a lot of anecdotes and stories, and he's obviously a good speaker, and I like hearing what he has to say, but I'm wondering if it's falling on deaf ears a little bit at this point. I think people are sort of tired of the rhetoric around here. They're tired of promises being made and not kept, or people unable to keep their promises. People just want to see better results. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. They just want to see it actually happen. And until that happens, Bill McCartney can stand up for John Embry all he wants, and anybody else can as well. But I don't think that's going to change. I don't think the attitude from fans and whatnot, the negativity is going to change until the football team changes, until the results change.
Yeah, for the record, I don't think CU should be considering any sort of change with the football coach. They just hired John Embry. I mean, this is his, 16th game?
Yeah, this week will be 17th.
17th game. I mean, who are you going to get? Some young up-and-coming guy and pay him $700,000 a year? You're already doing that.
And then if that guy doesn't work out,
yeah.
What do you give him, 10 games to make it work?
I mean, you'd have to quadruple or even better your coaching salary to get, not Nick Saban, but a guy like that could really do some things. But, I mean, that's not going to happen. You got to ride it out, and that's not looking good right now. But to John's point, it's a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores, and, he's already talked about 2014 when these freshman corners are juniors. So I would say that's probably the deadline for John Embry, 2014.
The other day, Coach McCartney was saying the only way through this is through this. Mm-hmm. You got to get through it and play your way through it and improve. And I agree with that assessment. I think that's totally spot on. And it's going to be painful. And speaking of painful, the Buffs are 19-point underdogs going into Washington State. What do you think happens?
I think this is the best opportunity to get a Pac-12 win. And unfortunately for the Buffs, they're really banged up and young in the secondary, and they're facing Mike Leach. So I think they'll compete. Of course, I said that last week, but I think they'll compete, but they're not going to win.
Yeah, I don't think win is in the forecast either, but I definitely don't expect 69-14 again. I think the margin of victory will be a little bit smaller for the Cougars, but the Buffs will still be looking for their first victory after this one.